Mukouda Tsuyoshi, a 27-year-old salaryman from rural Japan, was suddenly summoned to a medieval-style fantasy world. Not as a hero, but just caught up in a hero summoning by the Lacel Kingdom. Unlike the other three summoned youths who had strong combat and magic skills, Mukouda's stats were low, and his only unique skill was Net Super, which even the others laughed at. The kingdom's king, a flashy, overweight man wearing a jewel-covered cape, claimed they summoned heroes to fight a demon king threatening their land. But the king, queen, and princesses lived in luxury, showing no real concern for their suffering people. Mukouda found this suspicious. It seemed the kingdom planned to use the summoned heroes as tools, and since Mukouda wasn't a real hero, he might be discarded or worse. Not wanting to be trapped, Mukouda acted humble and asked for just enough money to live a few months while he figured things out. The kingdom, apparently glad to get rid of him, gave him 20 gold coins and kicked him out of the castle. Now wandering the royal capital with only that money, Mukouda knew he had to learn fast about this world, and find a way to leave Lacel before it swallowed him whole. He called out to street children near the market and offered them 2 skewers from a nearby stall in exchange for a quick lesson on life in the capital. After a wary pause, they accepted and launched into a rapid rundown. They explained the currency system: iron, copper, silver, gold, large gold, and white gold coins, each worth 10 times the previous. A skewer cost 5 iron coins, and a family of 4 could survive a month on about 6 gold coins. Without an adventurer's or merchant's guild card, travelers had to pay entry taxes everywhere. The kingdom's war against the demon race had actually been started by humans, sparking suspicion from neighboring states and driving refugees, many orphans, into the streets. The kids had learned all this from juggling odd jobs and pointed Mukouda toward a daily stagecoach running from the capital to the border town of Kiels. Their top advice was to leave Lacel Kingdom as soon as possible. Armed with that information and the 20 gold coins the kingdom had given him, apparently an apology for the forced summoning, Mukouda headed to a cheap clothing shop the kids recommended. The owner sold him brown shorts and a shirt for 7 silver coins and bought his summon suit, white shirt, and business bag for 3 gold coins, leaving Mukouda with 2 gold and 3 silver coins. The owner also gave him a cloth shoulder bag for his phone, papers, and pens, and suggested the third and a head for a reasonable night's stay, costing 4 silver coins plus a meal. Back in his room, Mukouda activated the open status chant he'd learned in the castle. A window displayed his stats. A 27-year-old from another world, level 1, stamina 100, magic 100, attack 78, defense 80, agility 75, with the appraisal skill item box and the unique skill Net Super. The kids had told him only summoned heroes could check their status anytime, while civilians usually needed a guild-issued status checker. His numbers were a bit higher than a typical civilian's, confirming the summoned privilege. The real puzzle was the Net Super skill. Mukouda touched its name on the screen, and the interface morphed into something that looked exactly like the e-commerce site he used back home. He placed a 500 milliliters bottle of water, 8 iron coins, and a sweet bread, 1 silver coin, into the cart, but the purchase screen flashed insufficient balance. A rectangular frame appeared, and when he slid a silver coin into it, the coin vanished and the screen filled with silver particles. Confirming the order, a cardboard box appeared. Opening it revealed the water and bread he'd ordered. He realized Net Super wasn't a combat ability at all but a handy online shopping magic, something the kingdom's elite ignored and the other summoned heroes mocked. Mukouda realized that as long as he had money, food wouldn't be a problem, and with his Net Super skill, earning money seemed possible. This skill wasn't some heroic cheat, but it could make him rich in this world. From what the kids told him, salt was expensive in this landlocked country, and only nobles could afford spices like pepper or sweets. With Net Super, he could buy salt, pepper, sugar, and more at prices like back in Japan, then sell them here for a big profit. He figured other goods might also bring in money since the skill covered everything from daily necessities to clothes. Still, registering with the Merchants Guild here was risky. If they discovered his skill or how he made money, the country might interfere. So, he planned to wait until he reached the neighboring country to register. Tomorrow, he would leave town fast and head there, knowing he wouldn't sleep in a proper bed for a while. With that, he fell asleep, ready for the journey ahead. After breakfast, Mukouda went to the stagecoach terminal. The fare to the border town was 1 gold coin, and the trip would take 4 days. He bought dried meat, black bread, a leather water bag, and a bigger knife, then boarded the coach. The other passengers were a middle-aged peddler, a young family with 2 kids, and a woman in her mid-30s. 4 adventurers guarded the stagecoach. On the road, Mukouda talked with the peddler beside him. The man was buying soap to sell in Kiels, saying nobles paid 3 silver coins per bar. He mentioned his rare item box skill, which only 1 in 1,000 people had, and that nobles hired those with large item boxes. Mukouda brought up appraisal skills, and the peddler said only heroes summoned from other worlds had them, so merchants didn't get that advantage. The peddler whispered that the kingdom was getting suspicious. Families would have trouble leaving, and the borders might be sealed soon. He planned to leave quickly since he was single. The guards easily killed some goblins and wolves along the way. When they reached Kiels, the stagecoach terminal had a sign saying stagecoach operations were suspended. The peddler's warning was coming true. Mukouda went to a busy tavern and asked 2 adventurers nearby what was going on. They said the suspension was to stop people from leaving, since fewer citizens meant fewer soldiers and less tax money. The kingdom was already at war with the northern demon race and was preparing to fight the western Malbear kingdom, so closing the borders was expected. They told Mukouda to leave fast and suggested hiring an escort from the Adventurers Guild before the roads closed. Knowing he couldn't handle the monster-filled roads alone, Mukouda decided to pay for an escort to the neighboring Funan kingdom. At the Adventurers Guild, Mukouda requested an escort to the Funan kingdom. He ignored the stares from adventurers, reminding himself he was a client. At the counter, he learned that on-foot escorts required C-rank adventurers and at least 7 gold coins. The receptionist said 8 gold coins would be better since stagecoaches were suspended and demand was high. Mukouda agreed to pay 8 gold coins and added that he would provide all the food to make the offer more attractive. The next day, the guild called him with a party ready. The C-rank group Iron Will. Their leader Werner was a tall, bulky warrior with many scars. The team included Vincent, a swordsman, Rita, a scout with short swords, Ramon, a white-haired magician, and Franca, a young healer with a notably large chest. Mukouda introduced himself simply as Mukouda to avoid noble attention and felt confident in the balanced party. They planned to leave the next morning. Knowing he had to prepare a lot of food, Mukouda bought a cloak and tableware. He saw a costly magical cooking stove but decided to buy a portable stove through his net super skill instead, which was cheaper and could pass as magical. Back at his inn, he ordered the stove, gas canisters, cookware, and enough ingredients for 6 people: cheese, ham, sausage, eggs, vegetables, and seasonings. The shopping cost 2 gold coins, leaving his funds tight. Mukouda accepted the strain, planning to register with the Merchants Guild in the Funan Kingdom and sell goods to secure a safer life. Mukouda met the Iron Will adventurers, who were already waiting, and they immediately set off for the Funan Kingdom. The journey began smoothly, with the adventurers forming a protective formation around Mukouda, ready for any emergency. During a lunch break, Mukouda prepared a meal. He pulled out a portable stove from his item box, explaining that he had acquired it cheaply from a friend and that his item box had only a small capacity. He quickly made simple sandwiches using bread, cheese, and ham from his net super, and secretly prepared instant consommé soup. The adventurers were stunned by the deliciousness, especially the soft bread, which they said only nobles usually ate. Mukouda quickly claimed it was a special bread from his hometown, stored in his item box. The Iron Will members expressed deep appreciation for such a warm meal on the road, noting that travel food was usually bland and unappetizing. They admitted they had taken his escort request not just for the reward, but because the promise of good food during the journey was a rare luxury. Grateful for their help in escaping the unstable country, Mukouda offered to handle all their meals for the rest of the trip. The adventurers were delighted, knowing that good food made any journey better, and looked forward to the rest of their travels. On the 3rd day after leaving Kiels, their leader Werner called to stop for camp as the sun set. Mukouda prepared a simple dinner of fried sausage, pot au feu, and bread. The party, Vincent, Rita, Franca, and Ramon, ate eagerly and praised Mukouda's cooking. Rita and Franca said they felt sharper and stronger after eating, which made Mukouda curious. He secretly used his appraisal skill on Rita and saw her stamina and magic power had temporary boosts. Checking the food, he found the pot au feu raised stamina by about 20% for an hour, while the sausage and bread gave small magic power boosts. Realizing his cooking gave stat buffs, Mukouda felt a chill. If anyone found out, it would be very bad. Since only summoned heroes had appraisal and identification magic was rare, he decided to keep it a secret. A few days later, after hunting a huge red boar, Mukouda stored the excess meat in his item box and got permission to cook it. He made ginger pork stir-fry with cabbage and instant consommé soup. When served, the group was impressed. Vincent called it crazy good, Rita said it was the most delicious thing she'd ever eaten. Franca, who usually disliked red boar, loved it, and Ramon praised the raw cabbage with the meat as a masterpiece. Suddenly, a deep voice demanded some of the food. A magnificent wolf with beautiful fur appeared. Nothing like the demonic wolves they'd seen before. The adventurers froze. The wolf, a Fenrir, took Mukouda's half-eaten plate and swallowed it in one bite, then ordered more. Werner broke into a cold sweat, whispering Fenrir's name in disbelief. Knowing the danger, Werner told Mukouda to obey. With no more cooked food ready, Mukouda nervously asked the Fenrir to wait while he made more. After eating nearly 8 kilograms of stir-fried pork, the Fenrir told Mukouda they would form a familiar contract. Mukouda tried to refuse, but the Fenrir used magic to stop him from speaking and warned him by mentioning his divine ancestry. The Iron Will members silently urged Mukouda to accept, leaving him no choice. Reluctantly, Mukouda agreed. The Fenrir touched his forehead, causing a brief glow that sealed their bond. Then the Fenrir asked if Mukouda was a summoned hero, a secret Mukouda quickly hushed. The Fenrir explained that as his familiar, Mukouda had to take care of him, especially by providing 3 meals a day, clearly hooked on Mukouda's cooking. Mukouda tried naming him Pochi and then Koro, but the Fenrir rejected both and finally accepted Feru. Werner and the others were shocked. Werner confirmed Feru was the legendary Fenrir known to have destroyed entire countries, and that forming a contract with one was unheard of. Mukouda struggled to believe this terrifying legend matched the food-obsessed creature before him. As they neared the Venan border, the group grew uneasy. Werner worried Feru's presence would alarm the guards and lead to a fight with the Imperial Army. Ramon added that even if they got in, the whole country might chase Mukouda, fearing he planned to use Feru to take control. Feru overheard and casually offered to destroy the country if they caused trouble, but Mukouda quickly shut that down. Unbothered, Feru then said it was time for another meal. Mukouda realized their red boar meat supply was dangerously low after Feru's huge appetite. He told Feru that if he wanted more meat, he'd have to hunt it himself. Feru agreed and ran off into the wild. Feru ran into the nearby forest and returned with a huge bird in his mouth. Mukouda insisted Feru should earn his own food instead of relying on the red boar meat they'd hunted, warning he'd go broke if he kept buying food. Werner, Rita, Vincent, Franca, and Ramon all praised Mukouda for commanding a creature known for crushing whole countries, but the contract with Feru was still new. The bird Feru caught was a B-rank demon called a rock bird. Mukouda asked Feru to dissect it and give any valuable parts to the Iron Will Guild, promising the meat would cover the cost of the previous boar. The guild members hesitated but agreed, seeing the dissection as enough payment. Mukouda grilled the rock bird with teriyaki sauce, using a pan and tipping out excess oil since he couldn't wipe it off outdoors. He also made freeze-dried onion soup and served the meal to everyone. Feru ate most of the meat, while the others had their portions. Approaching the border fortress of Venan country, the group moved quietly but guards still appeared. Werner went ahead to explain, and Edgar Woolgard, commander of the 4th Night Squadron, stepped forward. He confirmed the familiar contract with Feru and warned that a Fenrir capable of destroying a country must not act violently inside Venan. He asked Feru to promise restraint. Feru said he wouldn't be aggressive as long as no one harmed his master. The commander, surprised, allowed them entry but told Mukouda to keep a close watch on Feru. Mukouda reassured him, recalling Feru's calm behavior since the contract began. Rita added that Feru had even been obedient when asked to bring back prey. The commander, still amazed, asked how they controlled such a beast, while Mukouda silently hoped nothing would go wrong inside the country. After paying the entry tax, 5 silver for Mukouda and 2 for Feru, he entered Venan. Iron Will had helped him cross the border and explained Feru's status, which was a relief since traveling alone in a monster-filled world was risky. Their next goal was Falliers, a city near Venan's border. Werner suggested joining a guild to make things easier. Mukouda said he wanted to earn money while traveling. Vincent recommended the Adventurers Guild, but Mukouda preferred the Merchants Guild, since he could sell food and raw materials. Werner pointed out that Feru hunted his own food, but the Adventurers Guild would buy the high-ranked monster parts Feru caught. After some back and forth, Vincent said some people register with both guilds. Mukouda decided to join both. Entering Falliers cost more taxes, 2 silver for Mukouda and 1 for Feru, but the city guards let them in without trouble. As Werner predicted, a messenger from Margrave Lindell named Edmund was waiting. He said the Margrave wanted to meet Mukouda. Mukouda refused, saying he was just a traveler, but Edmund insisted. Feru growled and bared his fangs, scaring Edmund into running away screaming. Mukouda told Faru to calm down, but Faru said anyone trying to use his power needed to be taught a lesson. Werner warned that the aristocrats' private army probably couldn't match Faru's strength. Franca and Rita agreed. Vincent added that only the ancient dragon could rival Faru, and Ramon nodded. The group's confidence made Mukouda realize the danger was real but manageable. Vincent got excited recalling that Faru had fought the ancient dragon about 400 years ago and it ended in a draw. After that, Werner asked Mukouda to sign a report confirming he'd completed his task. Mukouda tried to return the red boar meat he'd been keeping, but they insisted he keep it in exchange for the rockbird materials. They praised his cooking and thanked him for the help. With the paperwork done, Mukouda prepared to leave Falliers, still planning to join both guilds and grateful for the unexpected allies he'd found. Mukouda greeted the Iron Will members as they left, then asked what his next task should be. He didn't plan to stay long in the country but decided to register with the guilds first. Werner had suggested the Adventurers Guild, yet Mukouda headed to the Merchant Guild because that was his original goal. He called his familiar Faru, telling the demon to hunt while Mukouda handled the trade side. Faru would bring monster raw materials, which Mukouda could sell, while Faru didn't care about the profits. He only wanted good food. At the Merchant Guild's entrance, the crowd panicked at Faru's appearance. Mukouda quickly explained that Faru was his familiar, and the tension eased. He approached the counter where Michaela, a blonde-eyed clerk, welcomed him. Michaela outlined the guild's rank system and fees. For an iron rank, traveling merchants with a simple stall, the registration cost was 5 silver coins, with annual fees and taxes to follow. Mukouda, short on cash, confirmed he wanted the iron rank and paid the 5 silver coins. Michaela handed him the guild card and warned that losing it would cost 8 silver coins to replace. After the registration, Mukouda asked whether the guild bought goods. Michaela said they did, depending on the items. He mentioned he intended to sell salt and spices, and she told him to return the next day with the merchandise. She also promised to wait for his arrival. Leaving the guild, Mukouda realized he hadn't asked about lodging for himself and Faru. He rushed back, and Michaela recommended the Vaulting Horse Pavilion, a nearby inn that accepted familiars for a nightly fee of 7 silver coins. Though pricey, it was the only place that could house Faru. At the inn, Faru complained of hunger after an afternoon without food. Mukouda admitted they hadn't eaten and decided to cook dinner. He had a piece of red boar meat from Iron Will and wanted rice, but only owned a single gas stove. To prepare, he ordered rice, a clay pot, the stove, 5 kilograms of salt, and 100 grams of spices from an online supermarket, spending about 8 silver coins, leaving his wallet nearly empty. He soaked the rice for 30 minutes, then seasoned and grilled the boar meat with soy sauce, creating a thick steak. He fed the steak to Faru, who devoured it eagerly and asked for more. Mukouda experimented with different soy sauce flavors: garlic, grated radish, onion, butter, enjoying the variety. He noted that such sauces were handy treasures from home. With Faru satisfied, Mukouda turned to the rice, ready to finish his modest dinner despite his dwindling funds and the promise of tomorrow's trade at the Merchant Guild. Mukouda carefully prepared a meal, cooking rice in a clay pot and grilling red boar steaks for Faru. The legendary Fenrir, surprisingly particular, demanded his steak be garlic-flavored. Mukouda, meanwhile, savored his own red boar steak dawn, finding the combination of tender meat, onion-flavored soy sauce, and freshly steamed rice utterly delicious. He even shared some rice with Faru, who, to Mukouda's surprise, found the unfamiliar grains quite palatable. Mukouda reflected on how invaluable his unique net super skill was, allowing him to procure such comforts even in this new world. He briefly worried about feeding onions to a dog-like creature but quickly dismissed it, reminding himself that Faru was an otherworldly demonic beast, seemingly immune to such concerns. The next morning, after another steak breakfast for the insatiable Faru, Mukouda prepared for his planned transaction at the Merchant Guild. He had purchased salt and spices through his net super but to sell them locally, he meticulously repackaged them into traditional jute bags and wooden containers, mimicking the local market's presentation. With Faru accompanying him, Mukouda headed to the guild, planning to register with the Adventurers Guild afterward. At the Merchant Guild, Mukouda presented his goods to Michaela, the staff member. Her eyes widened at the spices, and she quickly led him to the guildmaster, Robert, leaving Faru at the counter. Robert, a seasoned merchant, carefully inspected the salt and spices. He was astonished by their purity and potent aroma, declaring them of magnificent quality, unlike anything he had seen in his many years of trade. When asked about their origin, Mukouda offered a vague, laughing explanation about a mysterious trader. Robert then made an offer, 4 gold coins for the salt and 10 gold coins for the spices. Mukouda was stunned. He had bought them for barely 1 silver coin. Misinterpreting Mukouda's shock as shrewd negotiation, Robert quickly raised his offer to 15, then 17 gold coins. Mukouda, still reeling from the unexpected windfall, quickly accepted. This massive profit allowed him to immediately pay his annual merchant guild fees and taxes, securing his membership for the entire year. With 14 gold coins remaining from the sale, his total cash now stood at a comfortable 20 gold coins, giving him much-needed financial stability and the ability to trade wholesale with his new guild card. After selling salt and spices, Mukouda left the merchant guild with some profit and headed to the adventurers guild. The building was large, filled mostly with warriors, about 4 to 1 compared to wizards. Faru, the demon Fenrir, walked beside him, and no one dared challenge them. The line moved quickly, and the receptionist, a polite but less friendly woman than those at the merchant guild, handed Mukouda a form. He paid 5 silver coins and pricked his finger with a copper needle to register as a G-rank adventurer. She explained, reluctantly, that he could only take quests of his rank or one above. Failure would bring penalties, and if he didn't accept a quest within a month, his registration would be cancelled. Michaela had given a similar explanation with a fake smile. The guild didn't belong to any country, didn't take responsibility for members' actions or injuries, and forbade private wars between adventurers. Mukouda checked the bulletin board and picked a temporary quest to collect kiayu grass, paying 1 silver coin, and maju grass, paying a bit more. Faru said he'd hunt while Mukouda gathered herbs, and he bought a short sword at a nearby shop for backup. Outside the east gate, the meadow was safe, but Mukouda still armed himself. Faru cast a protective barrier around him, promising safety even if demons appeared. Mukouda found the kiayu grass after some searching and cut 18 stalks. The maju grass was poor quality, but he managed to gather 7 pieces. With the herbs collected, Mukouda bought meat from the supermarket for Faru's appetite and prepared to complete the quest before his registration expired. Mukouda went to the market and bought an onion, a broth cube, a kilo of minced meat, a 700-gram bag of pasta, and 10 cans of meat sauce, spending 5 silver and 4 copper from selling salt and pepper to the merchants guild. Back at camp, he boiled water, caramelized finely minced onion, added the meat, then the sauce. When it dried out, he dissolved the broth cube in hot water, seasoned with salt and pepper, and finished the sauce. Faru appeared, dropping a game he'd caught. Mukouda put his pots, pans, and food into his item box, then mounted Faru. The demon ran so fast Mukouda had to hold on tight, but they reached the meadow safely. Mukouda boiled pasta for 5 minutes, plated it, and topped it with the meat sauce. He fed some to Faru, who ate eagerly and got sauce all over his mouth. Mukouda laughed. Then Faru panicked and dunked his head in water. In the afternoon, Mukouda picked herbs, gathering 40 kiayu grass and 20 maju grass. Much more than the 5 he needed. Using appraisal, he identified Faru's catches. 5 orcs, a red boa, a black serpent, another red boa, 3 cockatrices, a giant toad, and a mad grizzly, all stored in his item box. He rode Faru back to town, where the gate guard gave him a strange look. Mukouda then headed to the Adventurers Guild, telling Faru to go there. Mukouda arrived early at the Adventurer Guild, which was nearly empty. He quickly reached the counter, showed his guild card, and handed over 40 kiayu grass for a quest that only required 5. The receptionist, a stern old man, was surprised but gave him 6 silver coins and noted the extra amount. Mukouda then submitted 5 maju grass for another quest, keeping the rest in his item box. Next, Mukouda asked if they bought Red Boa, a monster beyond his G-rank. The receptionist directed him to another window. There, the same old man checked Mukouda's haul. 5 orc carcasses, 2 red boas, and several other trophies. He led Mukouda to a backroom depository, and, after a brief talk about rumors of a hunter contracted with a Fenrir, allowed Mukouda to summon his demon Faru. In the warehouse, Faru showed a pile of monsters. Rock birds, a giant dodo, a black serpent, 3 cockatrices, a giant toad, and a murder grizzly. The old man was surprised by their size and rank but accepted them since Faru caught them. When Mukouda asked if he could eat the monsters, the clerk confirmed they were all high-quality meat. The old man suggested taking the meat tomorrow, but Mukouda wanted some now. The clerk quickly skinned the red boas, separated the meat and skin, and discarded the organs. He gave Mukouda about 200 kilos of red boa meat, saying the skins would be sold later. Mukouda stored the meat in his item box and left the guild. Back in the main hall, adventurers stared. He had just sold strong monsters and secured enough meat to keep Faru fed for a while. Back at the inn, as the sun was setting, Faru said he was hungry. With only cabbage, onion, carrot, and green pepper available, and no ginger, Mukouda decided to make a quick stir-fry, giving Faru a bigger portion of meat since he always ate most of it. He cut the red boa meat into large pieces, then sliced the vegetables. He lightly salted and peppered the meat and fried it in salad oil. He cooked the vegetables in order: carrot, onion, green pepper, then cabbage, just enough to keep them a bit firm. After that, he added Chinese miso paste for flavor and mixed the meat back in. The strong miso smell combined with the fried meat and veggies filled the kitchen. Faru dug in and ate 3 servings like always. Mukouda tried some too but realized he'd forgotten to prepare rice, so he ate it with bread and made a note to stock up on rice. Faru seemed satisfied, which wasn't surprising since he's a big eater. Mukouda wondered what meat he'd get for Faru next. The next day, Faru and Mukouda went to the Adventurers Guild to buy more meat. The clerk saw their large order and took them to the warehouse, where piles of meat were stacked. Mukouda put a big chunk into his item box, impressed by its size, and left, knowing he probably wouldn't come back before leaving town. Then an old vendor showed up with a heavy jute bag and started listing the parts they'd gathered. Orc testicles for 2 gold and 5 silver, red boa skins and fangs for 2 gold and 4 silver, and cockatrice wings for 3 silver each, but one was damaged so only 5 silver total. He explained the uses: orc testicles for energy medicine, boa skins for bags and belts, fangs for art, and cockatrice feathers for pillows. He went on with the lockbird's wing and beak for 7 gold, the giant dodo's demonstone beak for 22 gold, and the giant deer's skin and horn for 28 gold, both with rare demon stones. Then he named the black serpent's parts: poison sac, liver, fong, eyes, skin, and a water element demon stone for 64 gold, and the murder grizzly's liver, claws, fur, and a bigger demon stone for 78 gold. The total came to 205 gold and 4 silver, but after a bulk discount it was 202 gold. Mukouda paid in regular gold coins since the market rarely accepted larger denominations like white gold or large gold coins. While the vendor counted the money, Faru yawned behind Mukouda, clearly bored. Someone nearby mentioned a great wolf following him, confusing Faru with the legendary Fenrir. Mukouda said Faru was just a great wolf, still big and gray but only a rank. The rumor stuck, but Mukouda had other things to think about, like what meat to get for Faru's next meal. He left the busy town with Faru, the great wolf demon, after paying the last fee and deciding to move on. They hoped Faru's presence would keep them from causing trouble. On the road, Mukouda tried practicing magic. Faru said he could use it, but Mukouda's first attempts did nothing. Faru told him to picture the spell in his mind instead of just moving his arm. Mukouda imagined fireballs and thrust out his hand, but only a faint spark appeared. Faru looked disappointed and explained magic comes from the mind, not the body. Mukouda focused on the warm feeling of magic flowing through him. After a while, he felt heat in his veins and a faint glow around his body. Faru noticed and made a soft sound, saying Mukouda had finally understood the basics. They stopped to eat, and Mukouda cooked orc meat Faru had hunted. He sliced it thin, fried it with onions, and added a sauce of ketchup, Worcestershire, sugar, liquor, and soy sauce. Faru sniffed the dish, happily ate it, and said it was delicious. Mukouda tried some too. Though the meat looked strange, it tasted rich like high-quality pork. After eating, they kept walking and Mukouda continued training. This time a small flame appeared on his palm, like a candle's light. Faru snorted, half amused, half annoyed, but admitted Mukouda hadn't failed. Quick pause. Hit like and subscribe if you want more hidden manhwa gems like this one. And go drop a comment right now, say you're loving it. Bet most of you scroll right past. Alright, back to the story. Later, they camped near a market town. Faru had caught many monsters, so Mukouda planned a feast. He bought wagyu beef, sausage, roast pork, and more orc meat, spending several gold coins. When the warm food arrived, Faru eagerly ate but stayed careful. Mukouda cooked the wagyu steaks with salt, pepper, garlic, onion, grated radish, and butter, serving them to Faru. He praised the tenderness and flavor, amazed that such meat came from another world. They agreed the monster meat went well with the fine beef. After the feast, Faru rested while Mukouda thought about his progress. He could now feel magic inside him, create a small fire, and cook meals even Faru enjoyed. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for now, he had food, growing magic skills, and a loyal companion ready for what's next. Faru, a 1,014-year-old Fenrir demon called the Matchless, had just eaten a huge amount of Wagyu steak and other foods from the net market. His stats, strength, magic, offense, defense, agility, jumped about 50%, which Mukouda figured was thanks to the quality of the otherworldly meat. Feeling energized, Faru set up a barrier strong enough to block even a dragon's breath, then headed into the dark forest. His magic gave off a faint glow, making it safe despite the night. Meanwhile, Mukouda opened the market window, bought a flashlight, battery, and a full bedding set, paid for with Faru's money, and prepared a simple meal of rice balls and coffee, remembering Japan. After eating, Faru slept on the bedding outside. He woke to find 3 piles of monster corpses beside him. Giant dodos, huge deer, lockbirds, black and red serpents, murder bears, 5 orc generals, an orc king, several ogres, and a silver-scaled metal lizard. Faru said he'd attacked an orc village, turning it into a bloodbath, and brought back only the strongest monsters because they sell for the most at the Adventurers Guild. Mukouda, overwhelmed by the amount, stored everything in an item box that stops time. He noted vegetables bought a week ago were still fresh inside. He decided to keep the haul for now and started thinking about cooking. Using monster meat, he made a chicken-style sauté from a cockatrice-like creature. He seared the skin in a pan, then made a lemon butter sauce with butter, lemon juice, and a bit of soy sauce. He served the dish to Faru, along with a bread sandwich and canned coffee he'd stocked earlier. Faru ate, satisfied, while Mukouda marveled at the endless energy and bounty the supernatural feast had given them. After a quick coffee break, Mukouda jotted a shopping list, then he and Faru set off again, practicing a bit of magic on the road. Vincent sighed that all he wanted was a good meal, and Rita nodded in agreement. The whole party was hungry after the recent guard request. They were hired by a medium-built man who introduced himself as Mukouda. He needed guards to escort him to a neighboring settlement and offered 8 gold pieces per head. The job felt odd because Mukouda claimed he would cook for them, and the pay seemed high for a simple food run. When they arrived, Mukouda laid out a spread that dwarfed any tavern fare: soft bread, juicy sausages, and a rich sauce that made them forget the usual hard bread and dried meat. The aroma was so strong it attracted a legendary beast, the Fenrir. The creature appeared, eyes fixed on the food, and growled a demand to be fed. Knowing they couldn't defeat it, the party urged Mukouda to obey. He offered the feast, and the Fenrir devoured it, then spoke in a low voice about making a contract. Mukouda stared, thinking it a trick, but the Fenrir, named Faru by Mukouda, actually proposed a pact, something recorded only once 3 centuries ago and usually achieved only by long-lived elves. Mukouda remained unfazed, replying that if anyone wanted meat they would have to catch it themselves. Faru's appetite was monstrous. After the meal he summoned a lockbird, a B-rank demon. The party tried to hunt it, and one member broke a foot while another broke a leg. Mukouda handed over everything except the meat, demanding payment far beyond what they could afford. Despite the danger, the Fenrir's power proved true. When they entered the border town of Falliers, the guards recognized Faru and a commotion erupted, but Faru easily quelled it. The combination of Mukouda's cooking and Faru's might seemed unstoppable. Later, the party agreed they would meet that legendary beast and its chef again. So they set off, eager to see Faru and Mukouda's unrivaled meals once more. Mukouda had spent 3 days spreading magic through his body, convinced he could finally cast a proper fireball. When he tried, a small, slow fireball rose from his palm, rolled about 20 meters, and popped with a weak pawn. Faru mocked the pathetic result and told Mukouda that only a real fight would help, promising a barrier that would block monster attacks while letting Mukouda keep his own attacks. Mukouda, scared of getting hurt and unable to use a sword, begged not to be forced into combat. Faru called him a coward, hauled him onto his back, and rode toward a monster area. Instead of a single weak creature, Faru dropped him in a goblin settlement teeming with clubs, swords, and axes. Faru created a barrier around Mukouda and, with a loud howl, attracted every goblin's attention. The goblins surged forward, but their blows were stopped by the barrier. Forced to act, Mukouda kept launching fireballs. Each shot felt a little stronger and faster, and the volley grew into a volley of volleyball-sized fireballs that exploded among the attackers. After a frantic series of casts, his magic ran out, his body exhausted, and he collapsed just as the last powerful fireball detonated. Fair appeared, unbothered, and reminded Mukouda that he could fight if he truly wanted to. With his strength spent, Mukouda lost consciousness, leaving Fair to finish the battle. Mukouda jolted awake in darkness and found Fair right beside him. The sudden awareness made him realize he had been unconscious for a long stretch. Fair, blunt as always, called the recent battle a good experience, but Mukouda was still shaken by the swarm of tiny green goblins that had chased him. He admitted his last fireball had been solid, yet he resented being tossed as a beginner into a goblin village that even housed a king. Fair blamed Mukouda's slow learning for the trouble, prompting Mukouda to check his own status. The screen showed Mukouda at level 3, with stamina, magic power, attack, defense, and agility all nudged upward, and a new skill, fire magic, added to his list. His job still read a person from a different world who got caught, leaving him wondering if the label would ever change. At that moment, Fair rolled a huge green mass toward Mukouda. Identifying it revealed a goblin king, confirming Fair's claim that he had led Mukouda into a village ruled by a higher-tier monster. Fair explained that goblin kings carried magic stones, which humans could trade for money, and that he had brought the unconscious Mukouda and the king back together. Mukouda briefly entertained the idea of asking Fair to hunt only stone-bearing monsters for profit but dismissed it as a recipe for trouble. Fair then hinted that a reward of otherworld food was owed for his effort. Mukouda reminded him that his previous monster haul didn't count because it was just a side effect of eating net superfood. Still, Fair declared he was hungry. Exhausted and low on magic, Mukouda decided to punish Fair by offering only sweet bread instead of meat. He opened the net super window, selected bean jam bun, strawberry jam bun, and cream-filled bun, added a box of canned coffee, and paid 5 gold coins from his account. When Mukouda placed the buns before Fair, the beast asked where the meat was. Mukouda replied that he was too drained to cook. Fair tried a bean jam bun, his eyes widened, and he declared it tasty. He then devoured the strawberry jam and cream-filled buns with equal enthusiasm, surprising Mukouda that his punishment had backfired. Encouraged, Fair demanded more. Mukouda warned him about overindulging in sweets, mentioning diabetes and tooth decay, but Fair scoffed and revealed he possessed the blessing of the wind goddess Ninrel, which neutralized all status ailments, including poison and disease. He claimed any god's blessing offered similar protection. Mukouda, feeling the odds were stacked against him, muttered that such power was cheating and wished desperately for a divine blessing himself. Mukouda and Fair headed west without a set destination, hoping to find a map. Fair sensed a village ahead and suggested they enter. At the gate, a guard stopped them and demanded proof. Mukouda showed his adventurer's guild card listing Fair as his familiar. The guard nervously asked if Fair was a great wolf. Mukouda said yes, thinking it would be less alarming than revealing Fair's true identity as Fenrir. Suddenly, Fair's voice echoed in Mukouda's mind, denying he was a great wolf. Fair explained that familiars can communicate telepathically, something Mukouda hadn't known. They agreed to keep calling Fair a great wolf in human settlements to avoid trouble, since revealing Fenrir's identity would attract nobles and cause problems. They also decided to use telepathy inside villages to avoid speaking aloud and exposing Fair. The guard, reassured, let them in. Villagers watched uneasily as they passed. The village chief of Raiden greeted them and said maps were too expensive for a small village and only sold in the larger town of Roddle, for days away. After Mukouda asked his questions, they left quickly, sensing the chief wanted them gone. Fair offered to carry Mukouda faster, but Mukouda asked for a slower pace to avoid falling. Fair agreed, and they set off toward Roddle to find the map they needed. Mukouda rode on Fair's back as the sun set, and Fair said he was hungry. Mukouda took giant deer meat from his item box, a huge deer-like monster's flesh, and decided to cook it like the deer steak his senior once made. He cut the meat into thin strips, pounded it to soften the fibers, then seasoned it with salt and pepper. After melting butter in a pan, he fried both sides until browned and served the first steak to Fair. Fair ate eagerly and immediately asked for more. Mukouda fried another piece, this time adding garlic, then made more with daikon, onion, and extra butter flavors. They both ate a lot. The meat was chewy but juicy, with a mild taste that kept them going for seconds and thirds. After finishing, Mukouda cleaned the pan and utensils. At night, Mukouda prepared a sleeping area by laying cardboard boxes from net super on the ground to keep moisture off the futon, then placed his futon on top. Fair saw this and asked for a bed too. Mukouda stacked 3 futons for Fair on the cardboard and told him to set a protective barrier before sleeping. Fair yawned, made the barrier, and fell asleep right away. With furs barrier up, Mukouda slept soundly, confident they'd reach the town of Roddle by lunch the next day, hoping it would be peaceful. Entering Roddle town was more trouble than I expected. The moment Fair showed up, a line of people started yelling, and I had to keep explaining that Fair was my familiar and harmless. At the gate, soldiers in armor stopped us, spears raised. I showed them my Adventurer's Guild card and confirmed Fair was my familiar. The soldier was surprised to see Fair was an A-rank great wolf and let us in, but warned me that if Fair caused any trouble, I'd face death or slavery. That threat stuck with me. I asked for an inn that accepted familiars and was directed to Elmira's in just past the gate. Roddle was busy, second only to the capital, and I noticed many collared beastmen, probably slaves. People whispered about Fair but didn't make a scene, so adventurers with familiars seemed common here. After settling Fair in the beast house, I went to a bookstore looking for a map. They had none, but I found a beginner's magic book. The owner said it cost 7 gold coins, which was too expensive for me, and mentioned that detailed maps were military secrets held only by high-ranking officials. So, I figured I'd have to find an old, rough map in the library and fill in details from adventurers' stories. The next day, after calming a grumpy Fair with extra food, I went to the library. I paid the entrance fee and brought a notebook and pen. After a long search, no maps. Disappointed, I looked at magic books and learned that everyone has magic power, but only those who can sense and circulate it can cast spells. I noted the 4 basic elements: fire, water, wind, earth, and special magics like ice, lightning, recovery, holy, and the legendary sacred magic, which needs a god's blessing. Plant magic was for elves, darkness magic for demons. I wrote all this down until the librarian noticed me. Back at the inn, Fair was sulking and hungry despite the big meal I'd left. I promised to cook more meat right away, which cheered him up, especially when I mentioned food from the other world. I came back from the net super with yakitori and tonkatsu for Fair, my 1014-year-old Fenrir demon. I took the yakitori off the skewer and put the tonkatsu on a plate, then said I'd fry more meat. Fair complained the portion was too small, but I ignored him, seasoned the meat with steak soy sauce and yakiniku sauce, piled it up and served it. Fair ate greedily, then burped and said it was delicious. While he ate, I checked my notes from the library and found that Fair had sacred magic, which only comes with a god's blessing. His record showed he had the wind goddess Ninral's blessing and huge stats. Level 906, stamina 9843, magic power 9481, plus mastery of all elemental magics and other skills. I realized the stories about a creature destroying armies or countries were about Fair, which made his satisfied burp feel a bit unsettling. Later, I went to the town's pub hoping to find adventurers to ask about the countries. The pub was busy, and a tough skinhead leading a party of 4 invited me to sit. I told them I was new to traveling peddling and wanted to learn about the kingdoms. The beastkin in the group, who looked like a tiger, said they'd visited many countries. When I stared at him, he glared, and another member explained that beastkin who aren't slaves are rare here. The beastkin agreed, saying beastkin are usually slaves in this country, but life is still better than elsewhere. They described the sacred kingdom of Rubinoff, the Geisler Empire, and the Saul's kingdom as harsh places for non-humans like beastkin, elves, and dwarves. Rubinoff is a human supremacist religious state punishing non-humans cruelly. The Geisler Empire is a strict military dictatorship treating them like animals. The Saul's kingdom, a vassal of Rubinoff, is similar. Compared to those, the Feenan kingdom offers slaves cheap wages and a minimal but guaranteed lifestyle. Lacehell kingdom also bans non-humans, but its ongoing wars force beastkin, elves, and dwarves to fight, and many nobles keep female non-humans as sex slaves. The adventurer's homeland, the Malbear kingdom, is surrounded by demons to the north, Geisler to the south, and Rubinoff-aligned states to the east. Border clashes with Lacehell suggest war is coming soon, a rumor I'd heard in Keels too. All 4 adventurers grew up in the same orphanage, which explained their close bond. The Adventurers Guild warns countries not to restrict C-rank adventurers, so nations reluctantly allow their movement. The beastkin spat about the hostile looks they got in Lacehell, making me realize how harsh this world really is. They then talked about the Khorasan Empire east of Lacehell, troubled by imperial conflicts. South-central small states are ruled by warring warlords, so adventurers avoid them. About 5 years ago, some coastal states formed the Quinn Republic, but it's already close to breaking apart. Further east are the Ermin and Leonhart kingdoms, both stable with strong armies and many dungeons, making them good places for adventurers. The leader said they were heading to Leonhardt and would visit Ermin too. Hearing all this, I decided my destination would be either Ermin or Leonhardt, both safe and stable. Now I just needed to see if Fair knew the way. A map would be really helpful. I muttered about needing a map, and the adventurer leader overheard. After whispering with his group, he pulled out a folded, rough sketch showing the basic positions of the countries. He asked for 1 gold coin, but I hesitated, knowing how valuable paper was. Seeing that, he cut the price to 8 silver coins, saying it was a discount for the drinks I'd bought them. I handed over the silver and left with the map, thanking them as they departed. Later, while examining the map, a couple of adventurers laughed at me. One scolded the others, then apologized half-heartedly when I protested. Another suddenly shouted that the map was normally sold at the Adventurers Guild for just 1 silver coin. He produced an identical copy, confirming the price difference. The laughing group mocked me for overpaying. The same adventurer explained that the guild's maps were compiled from traveler's notes, rivers, monster hotspots, village routes, so they were cheap despite being paper. Some guild members made detailed versions for personal use, and similar maps circulated through the Merchants Guild, since both groups roamed the lands. The bookstore owner, though registered with the Merchant Guild, had never heard of such sales. I realized I'd been ripped off, felt frustrated, but also learned how maps were produced and priced here. I resolved to be more cautious next time. After a shaky return to the inn, I decided to leave Roddle Town. Fair and I set off east toward the Ermin or Leonhardt kingdoms, both on the sea-facing coast. Fair, who prefers meat but eats fish sometimes, suggested cutting through the forest to a lake. When I hesitated about monsters, Fair brushed off the worry, erected a protective barrier, and told me to climb on his back. He sprinted so fast I shouted that he was moving too quickly while clinging for dear life. The speed carried us straight to the lake. Fair, ever hungry, declared it the best place to catch fish and unleashed a bolt of lightning onto the surface. The shock floated dozens of fish, violet trout, king trout, a massive lake shark, and a poisonous striped fish, onto the water. Fair used wind magic to gather them, offering me whatever I wanted. I noted the trout were only stunned and would revive, while the poisonous fish would kill me. Fair, protected by a god's blessing, ate the toxic fish without harm and laughed that poison didn't affect him. I packed the violet trout, king trout, and even the rare lake shark into my inventory, rejecting the poisonous fish. Then we headed back to the forest camp, determined to finally cook fish after a long time. At the camp, I bought butter, wheat flour, mushrooms, seasonings, and aluminum foil from the nearby market. I gathered firewood, ignited it with my improved fire magic, and prepared to roast the whole violet trout with salt and fillet the king trout. The fire crackled, the ingredients were ready, and I began the long-awaited feast. I gutted the fish first to avoid the bitter taste. Using a thick branch I found while chopping wood, I skewered the violet trout, salted it, and hung it over the fire to roast. For the king trout, I removed the backbone, which looked a bit odd but was good enough. I sliced the king trout, laid it on buttered aluminum foil, sprinkled salt and pepper, added onions, shiitake, and enoki mushrooms, drizzled a bit of sake, then sealed the foil and roasted it by the fire. Another piece of king trout was salted, dried, lightly floured, and pan-fried in butter until golden, making a meuniere, then topped with tartar sauce I'd bought from the net super. The roasted violet trout had crispy skin and tender meat. The foil-baked king trout paired well with soy sauce and yuzu vinegar, and the pan-fried fish with tartar sauce was delicious. I raised a can of long-mist beer, sipping as I enjoyed the meal. Fair dropped from the sky, took a bite of the roasted violet trout, and hummed in satisfaction. I grilled and pan-fried more fish using the same seasonings. Fair happily ate, asking for seconds of the silver and white fish slices, calling their flavors strange but tasty. Seeing Fair's love for meat, I decided to make more fish dishes in the future. We caught enough fish today, even a big one, which I planned to break down next time I visited the Adventurers Guild. I'd gotten decent at fire magic's fireball but was struggling with earth magic. Water and wind spells didn't work at all, and my stone bullet only made a tiny pebble that flew about 20 meters before dropping. Fair mocked how slow I was learning. I snapped back that not everyone was a cheat like him. Fair suggested more combat practice, which reminded me of the terrifying goblin horde I'd faced before. That night, while getting ready for bed, I noticed a bubbly, transparent creature the size of a soccer ball near my feet. It was a slime. When I asked Fair about my barrier, He said the slime must have been inside already and dismissed it as harmless. I poked the cool, jelly-like slime, which shyly poked back. I found it surprisingly cute and friendly. I checked the slime status. A 3-day-old baby slime with very weak stats. Seeing how vulnerable it was, I decided to feed it. I remember the trash from my net super deliveries. Plastic bags, empty cans, cardboard boxes, that I'd been storing because I couldn't just throw it away. I gave the slime an empty can, which it swallowed and digested quickly. Then it ate all the piled-up trash, solving my disposal problem. When I praised it, the slime jumped into my arms, shaking happily. Fair then said the slime had become my familiar. I was shocked, saying we hadn't made a contract, but Fair explained the contract forms if the slime agrees and I accept. Checking my status, I saw baby slime listed among my contracted magic beasts, leaving me stunned. I named the baby slime Sway. To my surprise, Sway's level shot up dramatically, seemingly from eating the other world's garbage. This unique diet made Sway incredibly useful. She not only disposed of our trash but also cleaned dishes. I taught her to only eat the stains, not the plates themselves, and she diligently saved us precious water and effort. I was deeply grateful for her help, calling her a good girl. Sway even had a favorite spot, a cloth bag I'd bought in the capital. One evening, as Fair, Sway, and I sprinted through a forest, I noticed the sun setting and called for a halt. Fair, though usually moving at incredible speeds, slowed down. After a dinner of meat for Fair, vegetables for me, and trash for Sway, I found myself craving something sweet. I browsed my net super and spotted some delicious-looking dorayaki. The moment I muttered about it, Fair was instantly beside me, demanding to know what looked tasty and insisting I wouldn't eat alone. Sway also wobbled excitedly, wanting a share. I bought the treats and some tea. I watched as Fair devoured his share, declaring the combination of skin and filling delicious. Sway, too, seemed thrilled, even eating the plastic wrappers. I felt a pang of guilt eating sweets before bed but admitted it was incredibly delicious. The next morning, I woke to find Fair unusually serious. He said the wind goddess Ninrel had appeared to him in a dream, offering me a small blessing if I made weekly offerings of sweets from my world. I guess the goddess just wanted to eat the treats she'd seen me enjoy, but the blessing was valuable. It would nullify most status ailments and improve my magic activation. I agreed. The catch was I needed an altar. Fair said any altar would do, even a cardboard box, as long as I prayed with gratitude. As I prepared a cardboard box, Fair added that Ninrel wanted the first offering to be bean jam buns, and cream-filled buns. Amused by the goddess's sweet tooth, I used my net super skill to get those buns plus coffee milk. I set them on the box, prayed, and when I opened my eyes, the sweets were gone. My status screen confirmed I had the wind goddess Ninrel's blessing. Small. In the divine realm, the beautiful wind goddess Ninrel watched me through a scrying pool. She'd been fascinated by the bean jam buns she'd seen on Earth but couldn't get them herself because gods can't interfere directly. When she saw me, a human with the net super skill that summoned those treats, and Fair, her blessed kin, enjoying sweets, she grew frustrated. Finally, she used the blessing as a way to get the sweets she craved. Ninrel, noticing I wanted a blessing, decided to grant me a small one. She immediately sent an oracle through Fair, telling me I needed to offer weekly prayers and offerings. Ninrel knew she had to be careful. If other gods like the goddess of fire or the god of war discovered the delicious sweets and alcohol from my world, they would demand their own share or try to bless me themselves. Her supply would dwindle, so she resolved to keep her new source of treats a secret. Receiving the divine message, I quickly began my prayers and offerings, including a bean jam bun, cream-filled bun, and coffee milk. Ninrel instantly teleported the treats. She took a bite of the bean jam bun and was instantly delighted, declaring the maker a genius for its subtle sweetness. She then sipped the coffee milk, finding its bittersweet flavor the perfect complement, and praised me for my excellent taste. The strawberry jam bun and cream-filled bun followed, each bite eliciting more delighted praise. Suddenly, a terrible realization hit her. She had eaten everything. There was nothing left to savor. She lamented having to wait for the next offering, blaming Earth's irresistible sweets for her lack of self-control. I wanted to see if Sway could level up by eating normal food since I'd only fed her otherworldly garbage before. Being an omnivore, she should eat dorayaki fine, so I decided to give her a proper meal. Sway was an 8-day-old baby slime at level 10, with decent stamina, magic, attack, defense, and agility. She was leveling fast, but maybe the right food would help more. I made a miso-grilled orc meat rice bowl. I marinated thick orc meat slices in miso, sake, mirin, and sugar for 2 hours, then grilled them over shredded cabbage for a fresh touch. After cooking rice, I served the meat and cabbage in a bowl for Sway and a deep dish for Fair. I called them to eat. Fair immediately devoured the meat. I warned Sway not to eat the bowl, but she slurped it happily, wobbling with satisfaction. Both wanted seconds, so I gave Fair extra meat and a second serving to Sway. They clearly liked it. Afterward, Sway's stamina and defense each rose by 1 point, showing the food gave a temporary boost, and that slimes could level up from non-food items too. It seemed only slimes could gain levels so easily, which might help keep me safe alongside Fair. Later, I practiced earth magic, shooting a stone bullet that hit a tree harder and faster thanks to Ninrol's blessing. I got tired quickly, so I bought a chocolate bar and black coffee from the net super. While I ate chocolate, Sway waddled over, grabbed half, and melted it instantly, wobbling as if asking for more. I gave her another bar and she happily ate it. Fair came back from the forest, where he'd gone after eating. He sniffed the air, caught the chocolate scent, and accused me of hiding treats, saying I couldn't fool his nose. His sharp, wolf-like sense had picked up the chocolate. He said he was tired from running and wanted some chocolate too. So the day ended with Sway gaining a small stat boost from a proper meal, Fair proving his keen nose, and both looking forward to more treats while I kept training my magic under Ninrol's blessing. One day, I was out of breath after a short run when Fair gave me a look that made me buy chocolate bars from the net super. Sway, the eyeless creature, seemed to want some too, so I got a share for her. Fair immediately devoured a bar, saying it was his first time tasting chocolate and that he wouldn't get a toothache because his status cancels ailments. Then a clear voice echoed in my head. The wind goddess Ninrol told me to offer sweets and dorayaki right away. It sounded like first telepathy but louder, and she called it an oracle. Annoyed by the trivial request, I still bought the sweets and placed them on a cardboard altar. The offerings disappeared instantly, and a voice said good job. Fair suddenly urged me to hurry and asked about my earth magic. I said my stone bullet spell now fired a single, stronger pebble thanks to Ninrol's blessing. After a quiet command from Fair, I told Sway to get into the bag, and we left, the goddess's strange demand already met. Later, in a forest, Fair suddenly stopped and ordered me off his back. He said we'd have a real fight this time. Since I'd improved my fire magic through combat, now I had to do the same with earth magic. I refused, but Fair insisted that without actual fighting, I'd never learn earth magic. Fair pointed to an open cave, calling it a young dungeon formed where magic essence gathers. It had only weak monsters like slimes, horned rabbits, goblins, and kobolds. I refused to enter, but Fair called me a coward and said he'd set a protective barrier for me and Sway, my companion. I demanded time to prepare. I decided to use the different world food from Net Super, which temporarily boosts stats. I bought a bunch of ready-to-eat dishes, fried chicken, croquettes, pork cutlets, yakitori, pizza, cream puffs, and more, and planned to eat small portions myself while letting Fair and Sway eat the rest. After eating, my stats rose about 20%. Level 3, Stamina 110, plus 24, Magic 110, plus 23, Attack 83, plus 19, Defense 82, plus 17, Agility 78, plus 16. My skills included Identify, Item Box, Fire Magic, and I had Fenrir and Baby Slime as familiars. Fur stats increased about 30%, and Sway reached level 16 with a similar 20% boost. Fair confirmed the barrier was ready and said there'd be no problem entering the dungeon. I was still uneasy, drew my short sword, and told Fair to make the barrier properly. I insisted I wasn't a coward but careful, and prepared to enter the shallow 5-floor dungeon to test my earth magic with the help of the strange foods boost. Fair and I entered the dungeon and immediately faced a slime. I hesitated to attack, but the slime suddenly melted. Fair revealed Sway had launched a powerful acid attack, which Sway then demonstrated by melting a rock with a concentrated stream. I was stunned by Sway's unexpected strength, realizing she might be a unique variant. Fair told me to attack the next slime, so I swung my short sword. After the slime dissolved into the ground, Fair explained that dungeons absorbed all dead creatures as nourishment, making me determined to avoid dying inside one. Fair pushed me to use magic. I fired a fireball, which felt stronger than usual, likely due to my special food. On the next floor, horned rabbits immediately attacked. I struggled. My sword strikes were ineffective, and my stone bullet spell only launched a single weak pebble. Fair, unimpressed, bluntly criticized my slow progress. I questioned why monsters attacked despite Fur's presence, but Fair explained dungeon monsters indiscriminately attacked all who entered. This made me resolve never to return to a dungeon. On the third floor, my worst fears appeared, goblins. My past trauma resurfaced, and I instinctively blasted them with fire magic, despite Fur's insistence on earth magic. As more goblins swarmed, I panicked, my weak stone bullets failing to stop them. Just as a goblin closed in, Sway launched another acid attack, melting it instantly. I was immensely relieved, hugged Sway, and praised her bravery, while Fair dryly observed that Sway was far more courageous than he was. Exhausted and shaken, I longed to escape the dungeon and return to the surface.